mamas. Welcome back. It's Dr. Deb and Dr. Shaylee from Align Life. We're so happy to have you join us today because we have such a great topic, something that I've been dealing with for the last 25 years in practice. And it's something that's never really gone away. It's something that antibiotics isn't just magically making disappear. Ear infections are something that are going to be a part of our lives if we have babies. That's just the way it is, right?
Yep, it is. So we are so excited to be here. If you don't know where our office is, we're in Sugar Hill, Georgia. We are an Align Life office, and like Dr. Deb said, her and her husband have been here for 25 years. She is specialized in pediatrics, and then I am also at the office now too. So we are so excited to talk to you guys about this topic today. The first thing we're going to start with is common versus normal. So ear infections often get this fake news, I guess we could say, that
for sure,
that they are just normal, that kids are just naturally going to get ear infections because that's what happens, right? That is totally false, and we want to break that myth before we even jump into this webinar. They are very common, with 80% of kids experiencing ear infections, which we agree, we see them all the time, but we start to see them less and less in our patients that either start care whenever they're babies or come to us for ear infections. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and we're super excited to dive into that.
Yep, we're going to talk about the do's, the don'ts, what's normal, what's not normal, and everything in between.
So one thing that we know about ear infections and why they are considered normal, but they're just common in kiddos, is that tubes, whenever we're first born, whenever a baby comes out into the world, their tubes are actually very flat. And we're going to talk about the anatomy of the tube itself. But that's where that myth comes into play, is their tubes are flat. And as they grow and as our face starts to elongate, it starts to drop. And that's where the tube becoming more vertical and dropping. I'm sure you've heard your pediatrician or some healthcare provider talk about that. But that's where the tube actually drops and the anatomy shifts and the drainage happens more frequently. But we're going to talk about some ways to help that happen on its own, and to prevent the delay of dropping through chiropractic care, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
So there are two types of ear infections. There is otitis media and otitis external. So we're going to focus on otitis media. It is the most common, and that is what you guys may have heard talked about as a middle ear infection. Again, we're going to try to not nerd out on some anatomy.
But we are a little nerdy.
But we are a little nerdy. But otitis media, so there are multiple parts of your ear. Ears are very teeny tiny, especially on your little ones. They're itty bitty, but they play a huge role in not only immunity, but in hearing development and speech development. Your ears are a very important part of your developmental process.
Even balance,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. So there's a ton of little crystals in there, and I'm sure if you've ever heard of somebody having vertigo, which we see a lot of patients come to us with vertigo, what happens is that fluid gets stuck in there, and those crystals start to float, and that's where the rocking motion of feeling like you're on a boat, I just rhymed, come into play. So again, ears are very important, and that's why making sure that we can limit ear infections and not have to rely on antibiotics to mask the symptoms is so important.
Absolutely.
And then Dr. Deb, in all of your years of practice, before we jump off the common versus normal topic, what would you say is, in chiropractic in general, do you see a lot of kids come in with ear infections versus those that are there?
I see, it's funny. I used to see a lot more ear infections back in the day, and now I see a lot more autism spectrum kids now. Yeah. It's crazy. So, but we still do see the ear infections. I commonly will have kids come into chiropractic office for ear infections because mamas have been down the path of going to their pediatrician and getting antibiotic after antibiotic, and it's just not getting rid of them. So somewhere down the line, somebody said, you should try a chiropractor. And usually pretty quickly, those ear infections go away without adding anything to the mix, without adding ear infections or any other kind of outside chemistry into the body.
Which is super cool that the body has the ability to do that. It's like we were designed perfectly or something.
Something like that.
But in talking about the traditional methods for healing ear infections, I know, and I'm going to reference a study here, but according to the CDC, for mild ear infections, and I'm sure you guys have all seen a mild versus a severe ear infection. They're very different. And
your babies will let you know.
Yes, your babies have noticed the difference. But according to the CDC, for a mild ear infection, your pediatrician or your doctor might recommend what's called the delayed antibiotic prescribing method. So what that is, and these are best practices, is if your child presents with symptoms of a mild ear infection, then the best practices, so the best way to handle the case is to watch and wait. So see if the symptoms get worse or if they get better, and then prescribe the antibiotic, but tell the mom to wait 2 to 3 days to see if the symptoms get better or if they get worse.
Have you ever had moms walk in the office that said, my doctor told me not to do anything yet?
Yes, right? Never. Never. But that is, and again, that is best practices, but
it's actually the gold standard, right? Doesn't the CDC set the standard for healthcare?
Yeah.
So if that's the standard, why is nobody practicing it?
That's a good point. That's a good point. Common versus normal, right? But that's just another example of common versus normal. So it's common for that panic mode to set in. So obviously your babies are unhappy and they're sometimes in pain with that, even that mild ear infection, and you don't want to see them that way. So we jump right to, okay, what can I do to make this go away in this moment? Not thinking about the fact that it may come back within a few weeks and you may have to repeat the cycle, or what the antibiotic unfortunately does to their gut biome.
Their gut and their immune system, absolutely.
Yeah. So obviously watchful waiting is what we try to do in the office too, but we want to make sure that we are taking the pressure off their nervous system and helping everything flow, which we'll dive into here shortly. So whenever we talk about the typical options for when you go to maybe your pediatrician, we want to prepare you for what the options might be, and then how you can make the best decision as a mom, because at the end of the day, whatever decision you make is the right decision, and we try to live by that. But number one is when you have an antibiotic exposure, it creates bacterial resistance. Right. So using an antibiotic once, the bacteria in your body get used to that bacteria. They build up a resilience, right? The second thing that can happen is they may recommend tubes, right? Which once those antibiotics, once they have prescribed them multiple times, you get diagnosed with what's called chronic ear infections. Chronic ear infections, then usually they send out for a consult to an ENT, and tubes are typically the conversation.
And I don't know if your kids have ever had tubes in their ears, but I can tell you from the kids in my practice, that come in after they've had tubes, or I myself have had tubes.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know. My mom smoked in the house. I don't know if you remember back in the 70s. People smoked in their houses, and they smoked on planes, and they even smoked in hospitals.
On airplanes?
Yes, everywhere. So it was crazy times. I look back at some of those movies and was like, oh my gosh, we used to do that. Yeah. So I kept getting ear infections, and finally I did have antibiotic after antibiotic, and finally I got tubes in my ears, but my body kept pushing them out. So if you've ever had a splinter in your finger and notice that eventually it comes to the surface and you can pull it out, the tubes are no different. They're a foreign object that the body does not want within it. Yep. So if we can figure out ways to help the body to get stronger rather than delaying the body's ability to do what it needs to do to function in a healthy way, this is what our goal is. When Dr. Shaley just said, whatever decision you make is the right decision, it's true. But the more informed a decision that you can make, the more empowered you are, the better off you and your family are going to be. Yeah.
Well, and so now that we're talking about you, when you had tubes, did they back when you had the tubes put in, because I'm assuming it wasn't like last week.
No.
Yeah, okay. Did they talk about tonsil removal or adenoid removal?
They removed my tonsils.
I didn't know this either. Wow.
Yeah. Okay. So that explains a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Okay.
So yes, back in the day, it used to be your tubes and tonsils.
Mhm.
And then when I got into practice, I noticed that there was a very big trend toward removing the tubes, the tonsils, and the adenoids. Like, how did God make our bodies with so many extra parts that we don't need? That
just take the gallbladder while you're at it.
Yeah, why
Might
not?
as well. Wow. Okay. Well, I learned something new today. So my next point was going to be that after tubes, or sometimes during the tubes procedure, they will automatically, which again, I do appreciate not putting kids under multiple times if they're going to end up taking them anyway, because that's their protocol. But I love leaving body parts in if we can, which God designed a perfect body, right?
Yeah. These are actually lymphatic organs that they're taking, and that's our body's way. This is how we detoxify ourselves. So if we remove organs that are attempting to detoxify and they get backed up and they swell because of the inflammation that's happening on purpose for a purpose, when we remove those organs as we get older, yes, ear infections go away because they've removed our availability to have them, but it's manifesting into something else.
Yeah.
So we don't, when we do these quick fixes or remove organs that our bodies need, it's not eliminating the body's response, it's changing it. The body's just going to manifest these issues in other ways as we get older.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if everybody knows or if this is common knowledge, but the reason behind why they put the tubes in, just to backtrack a little, is to help with drainage. So they drill a little hole essentially, and it helps everything, all of the inflammation, drain better into the back of the throat to then go into the lymphatic system and then excrete it appropriately. And the reason that tonsils and adenoids started being removed is that the adenoids are actually placed very close to where those tubes drain, right? And so what happens is we get inflamed, right? So whenever you have an infection anywhere, even if you get a cut on your arm and it turns into an infection, it gets very puffy and it gets very red and it's sore and it's uncomfortable, which is why those adenoids, because they're part of the lymphatic system, they're working too, even when you have an infection, and they get swollen and they block where the drainage is supposed to happen. But again, we just take them out, right? And then of course you're not going to have swelling, but the question is why. The fourth thing that happens whenever there's antibiotics, tubes, and tonsils is, like Dr. Deb was just saying, it alters your immune response. So that's something that all of these 4 components, if we can avoid it, especially in a holistic way, and keep all our body parts, not destroy our gut biome, and then also have healthy, happy babies, that is the ultimate goal long term. So whenever we're talking about anatomy, and I promise we will not nerd out too much, but this is really important for everyone to know. I'm sure you've heard of the tube itself because we just talked about it for 10 minutes. But the tubes themselves are very important. So they have 3 main roles in which when we're growing and developing, that they're responsible for. The first is equalizing pressure. If you've ever been on an airplane and you hear your ears pop or don't pop, right? That pressure buildup can sometimes get really painful. And if you've ever been on an airplane with a baby and their ears don't pop, because again, remember, they're flat, so it takes a little bit more time for the pressure to equalize, and you may hear the baby screaming, and it's so sad.
Poor mom
I know.
On the plane, I saw one walk on the plane one time, and she was already crying as soon as her baby made a little noise. And I was like, "It's okay,
it's okay, you're fine." But equalizing pressure is part of its purpose. Oxygen flow, believe it or not, we're supposed to have oxygen in and out of our ears. That is normal. And then drainage. So the main purpose of a tube is to drain, which is very important, right? If you have kids at all, you know that they are wet and runny in lots of orifices. So that's their body's response. That is a natural immune response to build up mucus, to have drool when they're teething, which we'll talk about teething here in a minute. And all that liquid needs to go somewhere, right? So God put a tube in, and it drains appropriately.
Body's smart, knows what to do.
It is.
Just got to keep it clear and free to be able to do its job.
So as chiropractors, we love the nervous system. So two nerves that we're going to focus on are the vagus nerve and the trigeminal nerve. Those are essentially nerves that come from off your cranial nerves, which is at the base of your skull, and they go to the muscles that help us with yawning, help us with opening and closing our jaw, help us with chewing, with your ears, which is why we're talking about that.
And this is one of the things that we really pay attention to when kids and babies and adults, when anyone walks in our office, we're paying attention to those little things, like if somebody yawns a lot, right? Because all of these things are connected. They're not something that should be ignored. They tell a story.
Yep. Or if you've ever seen a little kid that's constantly maybe like jaw jutting or clenching, grinding their teeth, this is why, pulling on their ears. They're all what we like to call body signals.
Yeah, even like I see a lot of kids doing this kind of stuff, like they're trying to unlock their occiput, which is putting pressure on these nerves that we're talking about.
Yep, and occiput's the base of your skull.
Yes,
yes.
Not an octopus.
Yes, not an octopus. But the physical structure of tubes is it's part bone and part cartilage. Well, in your ears, part bone and part cartilage, and all very important for these major functions that they provide us to do. We'd already talked about the adenoids, but just to briefly overview, the adenoids, they're two small pads of tissue in the nose itself. It's very close to what we said, to those tubes, and it can sometimes block that opening when it gets swollen, and they're usually larger in children. But again, by God's design, they're larger in children because children are exposed to more bacteria and more viruses, and their immune system is not as well seasoned as us whenever we become adults. Yes. So that's why they're typically larger, right?
And it's for this reason too that we'll tell parents, we get excited like when the kids are getting sick. Like nobody wants their kids sick, so don't get me wrong, I'm not one of those weirdos that wants to see your baby sick, but we get excited when our mamas come in and say, you know, he's got a cold, or he's drooling, he's teething, he's crying, or he's got a runny nose, he just went to daycare. And it's actually great that they're getting the exposures, because when we can naturally fight these infections or fight these bacteria or viruses that come our way, our body actually gets stronger.
Yeah, it does. And I know all the moms out there are probably shaking their head and saying, what do you mean it's great? I haven't slept in 4 weeks. But trust us, our sick kids make healthy adults. They're going to have to be exposed to it sometime, and they have to build their immune system. So we spent the first half of the webinar talking about the typical medical options for ear infections. And although that's really important, our ultimate goal is to utilize the body the way that it was designed to be utilized, right? So we're going to talk about chiropractic and why chiropractic is such a great option for not only preventing, but actually helping heal ear infections too. So to do that, first I'm going to draw out an example of what happens when an ear infection occurs and why they're really common.
Yes, you guys are going to love this because Dr. Shaley is a great artist.
Yes. So first I'll draw the ear. You can see the eardrum here in the front, and then the eustachian tube here off of the inside of the ear. The eardrum is the most common place for fluid to build up. So that's that blue part right there. The red part that I'm drawing here, these are actually the muscles, and we talked about those muscles in the previous slide. And this is what happens when fluid builds up. Is the brain sends a signal through the nerve, and like we talked about those two nerves, that sends a message to those muscles to help drain, essentially. So what happens, and why chiropractic is as amazing as it is if that signal is getting lost, if that signal is not able to make its way to those muscles that are supporting the tube itself and supposed to help it drain, then if that signal is getting lost, then the message is never sent and the tube never drains, which is where fluid builds up. And then that stagnant water, what happens whenever it's in a dark, warm place, is a breeding ground for bacteria and viruses. Yeah. And then that stagnant fluid becomes an infection, which is where an ear infection comes into play.
Well, most commonly we'll see ear infections. Of course, they can happen at any age, but we'll oftentimes see it during the teething process. Yeah. So what we've come to understand is that, first of all, we've already talked about this, the body's smart. God did not make a stupid body. Every body part is here on purpose. And so while the gums are about to break open and allow teeth to come through, that innate intelligence that runs our body understands that now we're going to be at risk for harboring or allowing into these holes bacteria or viruses, because now it's an open orifice within our mouths. So the body will naturally turn the power on, it'll turn that faucet on and start allowing the water or the fluid, the saliva, to start flushing outward to make sure that bacteria and viruses don't get into those holes. Well, if there's subluxation, which we're going to talk about, if there's interference in that nerve's ability to transmit the messages to the inner ear to keep flushing out the fluid, then some of that fluid can get backed up. So when there's interference, the fluid gets backed up, it sits in there, it harbors bacteria and viruses, and causes ear infections. And this is why when we release that interference, just remove the interference between the brain and the ear, telling that ear, release the fluid, it just does. So people look at us like we're crazy when we say, yeah, chiropractic has the potential to help children who are experiencing ear infections. And this is why we don't kill the virus, we just release the fluid.
Yep. And so many times, I know me personally and Dr. Deb too, we've had patients come in and, well, they bring their kids in and they start getting adjusted and they have the weirdest gunk start coming out of their ears. So it is.
Do you remember the mom you said, you told her?
I warned her. I warned her.
She was like, okay, this is her baby's first visit. She gets her adjusted. And this mama had been down the path of doing antibiotics and didn't want to do it anymore. And so she comes in like 6 weeks later. And I said, how did your baby do after his first adjustment? She's like, well, I thought this was going to help with the ear infections. And it actually gave him an ear infection. I said, what are you talking about? She said, well, that night I left and all of a sudden fluid started coming out of his ear. And I was like, oh no. I said, what did you do? She said, I got him on an antibiotic. I was like, no. His body was actually, the adjustment restored the nerve supply going to the ear and said, release the fluid. And guess what it did?
It released the fluid.
Yes. So he really wasn't experiencing a new ear infection. His body was relieving itself of the fluid that was causing the ear infection. So communication is key. And sometimes we just don't know when somebody's missing the mark.
Which is why we're educating online and to the masses. So share this with all your friends so they don't freak out. But why chiropractic works the way that it does is, like Dr. Deb said, it is simply you take the pressure off of the nervous system so the message can get to where it needs to go, so that that muscle or that organ or that tissue can act the way that it's supposed to. Yep, it's that simple. So
I don't know if you don't mind. I call it the dimmer switch effect. Right. If I have a switch over here with a dimmer on it, and I put a little bit of downward pressure, what happens to the light that it controls?
It gets. I wish we had a dimmer right now. That'd be really cool.
That'd be great.
It gets darker.
It gets darker, which means even though the light bulb has the ability to work at 65 watts, when I give it less energy, it works at less wattage. It's got the ability and the potential to work at 65 watts, but when we dim down the energy getting to it, it no longer has the ability to do that. So our bodies work very much in the same way, and that nerve system functions in a similar way, where when you have a little bit of pressure on that nerve, so to speak, from inflammation, from subluxation, misalignment of the bones of the spine, it literally dims down a perfectly healthy body's ability to work in a healthy way.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess a question that I get a lot is why do some kids get ear infections a ton, but then like I have a mom that she has 5 kids. She has 3 kids that never struggled with ear infections, but 2 of them get them all, or well, got them all the time, antibiotic after antibiotic after antibiotic, which was enough to drive her to realize that this was a problem, and she sought eventually holistic care, which has worked out great. But why do some kids get them and some don't? And the real answer is that there are so many things that we are exposed to from the minute that we are conceived, and even before actually. We talk a lot about thoughts, toxins, and traumas in our office, which are the 3 causes of subluxation. But for a baby, this newborn baby comes into the world, and that's why in our office we look at their birth history. Did they have the vacuum? Did they have forceps? Was their labor 45 hours long and constant contractions? and which is constantly pressing on that little baby's skull as they're coming out of mom.
Yeah. We always think about mom through the birthing process, right? But we don't really think about what baby goes through. And as baby's getting jammed into mama's pelvis, that's micro traumas over and over again before that beautiful little healthy baby comes out of the womb.
Yeah. Which again is why we check them so young. So making sure that, again, those two nerves that we talked about that go to the ears also go to the muscles that help you open your mouth, which you need to do for breastfeeding. They help you with yawning, which babies do a ton. They help you with stabilizing your neck. So babies sometimes will preference one side over the other, which is called a torticollis.
And even with like tongue tie.
Tongue tie, lip tie.
And tongue tie is it's something that baby is born with that develops in utero. So this also, if we don't address it properly, and sometimes we need to get it revised, but other times literally we just need to change how the structure is functioning. So in other words, with chiropractic care, so a lot of these kids with tongue tie or lip tie or with torticollis, they end up having more ear infections than other kids.
They do. And again, that's why we go back in their history and see, okay, what has, even if they've only been on this earth for 6 months, what has that 6 months look like? What did mom's 9 months of pregnancy look like? And what did mom's health and dad's health? He doesn't get out of this one.
That's
right.
What did their
what did their health look like prior to conception? And all of these things play into what the baby can be experiencing and can lead to an ear infection. And I know that sounds crazy, but it really is true. So most of the time, whenever we have kids that have chronic ear infections or have had a history of them, it has stemmed from the birth process. That's most commonly where we see an issue or something going awry in their system. But again, if those muscles are strained or sometimes damaged during the birthing process, then it puts more pressure on the nerve, and then the signaling from the beginning has been off kilter.
Absolutely.
Yep. So one thing, and I know we talked about another mama, but we love our patients, and we just love their stories. So one of our mamas has let me use her adorable child as an example. But this was a case where he struggled with chronic ear infections. His name's Avery. He is the sweetest little boy. So cute. But he actually came to our office because he was upstairs. We have a pediatrician in the building. She has an office upstairs. And his mom was upstairs, and she was going out to the car after she had just picked up another round of antibiotics. And she came in our office, and I typically don't get to see patients when they first walk in because our team takes care of them immediately. But I, for some reason, was at the front that day, and they walked in, and she just looked exhausted. She has a huge family, and this is her youngest, and he had ear infection after ear infection after ear infection, which has led to stomach issues and chronic congestion and not sleeping.
I remember when he came in, he was a boogery mess.
Yes, a mess. And now knowing him, he's just so lively. It's great. But
haven't you noticed too, like his personality has changed? He went from wild child to he's
calm, cool, and collected now. Yeah, it's great. But I remember this moment of this mom carrying like this just lethargic, exhausted child, and knowing Avery now, he would barely look at you. He was just so sleepy, just wanted to be on mom. And she walked in, and she was just looking for answers. She was like, I know this sounds crazy, but I heard that chiropractic can maybe help with ear infections. Can you help my kid? And of course, our answer is yes. We would love to do an exam and see if we can possibly help him.
We actually pray for that as kids and babies are going up to the pediatric nurse practitioner, that mamas will take notice. Our energy will move outside of our office space and into the hallway, so mamas will identify that this is a safe place.
And so just a little bit more about Avery. They came into our office. His mom felt that energy, felt that it was a safe space. We did his exam, found out that a ton about his history, which led to the possibility of leading to ear infections. And then he had I can't even count. He had multiple up until that point. Mom had lost count. And then he got under care, and he has not had an antibiotic since starting care, which is just amazing.
Yeah, and he's
So,
been under care
for
about a year and a half.
almost 2 years, yeah.
Almost 2 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is amazing.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, there's proof right there. The
yeah.
only thing they changed, diet didn't change,
Nope.
nothing else changed.
Nope.
Removed the interference and kept this child under wellness maintenance care, and he's doing amazing.
Yes. And we love him.
As are his siblings, who
Yes.
all came in with their own different things going on.
So obviously getting kids adjusted and restoring that function from the brain to the body so that it can work the way that it's designed. We will say that over and over. That is top tier. That is number one in what we do. But there are some home remedies. And I've actually learned a lot from my moms in the office. Moms are smart.
There's a lot of moms that do their homework. And I think we naturally attract a lot of those mamas. We love to empower our mamas to make great decisions. And oftentimes they will walk in the door because they are empowered.
Yes. Which is great.
Yeah, they've already done homework. And so they're like, this is what I need.
Yeah, I was looking for a chiropractor. Amazing. But some of the home remedies that some of our moms love and that they have shared with me, as well as we actually learned a lot of these in school. So it's cool to see moms learning on their own too. But the mullein and garlic oil, that is a big one. Warm salt compress, just getting anything out you can, loosening it is key. Onion poultice, which is actually something that I learned recently, which is super cool. But and I'll have details on how to make all of these whenever I send out the webinar. But
another thing is not just the poultice, which do you want to explain real quick how to make it?
It's kind of a long.
Easy, so just the simplified version.
So you essentially cut an onion in half. You in olive oil, organic, of course. You saute the onion. By saute, I just mean get it mushy. So you put it on there, you saute it, and then you pull it off, let it cool. You put it in a cheesecloth, and then that you can just put over the ear once it's cold, and it'll pull everything out.
Another thing that we do for colds and flu and ear infections is you can literally take an onion, slice it, put it on your little one's foot. I know it smells gross, raw onion sitting in the baby's bed with them, but put a sock over it and just let them go to sleep with it, and it will literally draw out toxins.
Believe it or not, it works in adults. I made my husband do it once. Yes, he was not happy.
You didn't let him sleep in bed with you, did you?
I did. Oh, no. I did, but it needed to happen, and guess what? He got better within 2 days. Yes. Another thing is we talk a lot about supplements. Obviously, we want the body to work the way that it can on its own, but we live in a toxic world. We have a lot of exposure to bad things. So colloidal silver is our go-to. Colloidal silver in the nasal cavities. Again, those adenoids are really close to the nose. So by spraying colloidal silver up the nose, it is a natural antiviral and natural antibacterial. So what it does is it helps support that lymph tissue and those adenoids. And then you can also, not with the same thing, but you can get a dropper and drip it orally down your baby's throat.
Yeah. So if you're not aware that colloidal silver will come in two different types of containers. One that's like a nasal spray, and we use that for everything. I even use it on my dogs. that is my go-to for everything, no matter what the problem is. Colloidal silver.
It's like duct tape.
Yeah. And then they also have it in a dropper. And there's also large bottles. We sell large bottles, so you can refill it,
which is great. But it is awesome. So we always recommend colloidal silver for any ear infection, and then gut support. So gut support is very broad, and it's broad for a reason. So a lot of times we'll tell moms, okay, if their child is constantly congested, they are just that child that wakes up in the middle of the night and you're worried if they're breathing because they have so much mucus. There's something maybe going on, whether it's something in the home that they're responding to, something in their diet. Dairy is very common in causing a lot of mucus buildup, or it could
even food allergies. And when she talks about the home, like the cleaning ingredients you use in your home,
laundry detergent,
laundry detergent, new carpet, new paint, there's off-gassing, there's particles flying in the air. So we're all susceptible to these things. And if there's any weakness in your immune system whatsoever, those are an extra added stress and can take you over the edge, or your child over the edge, to start exhibiting symptoms that are there all the time. So they become really chronic. So if we're adjusting a child or we're looking at their history and we're seeing that there's another layer here that we need to work on, that's when we start getting into gut work.
Yep. And we are very fortunate to have functional medicine actually in our office. And then I have a ton of functional medicine doctors across the country, and you do as well, that we refer to if necessary. But we fortunately have it rated our disposal, because we can refer right in-house, which is awesome. But recommendation wise, I would say if your child is experiencing any symptoms of ear infections, or they've had them in the past, and or if you've had a child that has tubes and their adenoids removed and their tonsils, it doesn't mean that it's too late. You can still support those muscles, because those muscles do more than just help drain in the tubes.
And the bottom line is, if they did have organs removed and they did have tubes in their ears, you have to remember that that's all symptomatic treatment, and the real root cause of what started it to begin with is there. It's still there. We haven't gotten rid of that. So even if it was a past experience, if you're an adult and had a past experience with this, it's no different, because we get adults all the time that come in with other issues like sinus and allergy issues or asthma, different things, different ways that the immune system has parlayed the things it was dealing with to other organs, because the ones that they used to manifest in are no longer there. We start adjusting those people, and given time and regularity of removing old patterns and recreating new patterns in that nerve system and in the muscular system, we see even those people start to get well. So it isn't too late if you've already gone that path of having surgery or taken antibiotics and you're not feeling it in the moment.
Absolutely. That, and as well as restoring the gut after antibiotics, which is where right away sometimes we may start with chiropractic care, but right away look at the gut if they're still having some symptoms of, like we talked about earlier, some antibiotic fatigue.
Yeah. And with that said, there's no quick fix. You know, like when we're talking about a gut, there's a lot of different things you can do. And a lot of times people will be like, well, I'm on a probiotic. And I'm like, that's great.
That's great.
One, where did that probiotic come from? Two, what strains of bacteria are in it? We don't want to overpopulate one bacteria, because whether it's good or bad, an overpopulation of one over the others is going to cause dysbiosis. It's going to cause a problem, more of a problem in the gut over time. So there's a strategy and there's a science behind it, and we do things like stool testing. We do food sensitivity testing. These things are important, because even when our mamas are trying to figure out, do I take out these foods, and they take out, let's say, dairy, but they didn't take out gluten, or they take out the dairy and gluten, but they didn't take out apples, which for you and I are fine. But for that child in that moment, apples are creating an inflammatory response. If you don't figure out really what the root cause is, we're really just practicing green medicine. And that's really, I mean, obviously I would rather you're on a supplement than on medication that could have altered effects to the body. But ultimately, we want to make sure that the things we're doing are making a difference. Who wants to waste time and money, right?
Absolutely. And our mission overall is obviously to help kids, but to help families. I mean, we're a family-based practice. We have plenty of family-based practices. If you're not local, across the country, that we have great relationships with and would be happy to refer to. But our ultimate goal is to create healthy humans from the start, so that they don't have to circle back when they're in their late 20s and 30s and 40s with all of these autoimmune maybe issues, which when the body is in a stress state, it will attack itself sometimes. Absolutely. Unfortunately.
And these days, our babies, no matter where you are being born into a stress state. We have tons, we're getting over vaccinated. We have too many antibiotics. We're not eating healthy. We have the GMOs. And like I said, all the things in our environments, inside and outside, that we're being exposed to constantly. So it would behoove you as a mama trying to raise a healthy family to think about these things, do your research, and reach out to practitioners that can make it a family experience. When you walk in, you're always learning something new. You're always putting your kids in, instead of being reactive, we're being proactive, so we can enable children to grow up in a healthy way, rather than waiting till something happens and then freaking out because we don't know what to do, right? And we don't have any support. So support is key.
Absolutely. And if you are local, we are a family-based practice, so we see everyone from the day they are born. We've adjusted literally 1-day-old babies.
Mm-hmm. An hour old.
Yep. Yeah. Sometimes in the hospital, sometimes in the home, yes. Depending on where their birth is. But babies too, we have no age limit on patients that we see. So if you are local and you have a kiddo that is struggling with ear infections, we would love to take a look at the case and see if it's something that we think chiropractic could help with. Most of the time it is, in all honesty. And if you are not local and you still have questions, or you think, hey, my kiddo has ear infections, but I can't drive to Atlanta, Georgia, because I live in Wisconsin, that's okay. We still gotcha. Just here is my personal email, so go ahead and you can send me a message if you have any questions, or if you want some information to dive deeper. We can provide that for sure, but more importantly, we can get you connected with an office that is local, and we can help as many families and generations as we possibly can.
That's it. And with that said, procrastination is the killer of health. So this is a limited time special. So get on that right away. This QR code is only going to be available for a very short period of time. So make sure you check it out. Do not procrastinate. Put your health first, your child's health first. And we look forward to seeing you or hearing from you and helping you to move forward in a healthy way.
Well, thank you guys. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Enjoy.